before 5. היה גבוה מ-20 אמה. What if the crossbeam on the entranceway was higher than 20 amot, and one comes to reduce it? The question is, how much must he reduce? So the Gemara wonders, what do you mean, how much must he reduce? As much as needed. We need the crossbeam to be no more than 20 amot above the ground. So whatever it is, if it's 20 amot and 2 tfachim, you have to reduce it by 2 tfachim. It's whatever it takes. No, just as long as it's actually here. It's not referring to reducing the crossbeam. It refers to elevating the ground, like making a platform on the ground, for it to be no more than 20 amot from the bottom of the crossbeam. The question is, how much must its width be? How deep into the mavoi must this raised area extend? That's the question. And that was a dispute between Rav Yosef and Abaye. Rav Yosef amar tefach, just 1 tefach, exactly corresponding to the tefach width of the crossbeam itself. The crossbeam is a tefach, so you make like a tefach on the ground, an elevated tefach.
Isn't it that the beam on the bottom is the minimum tefach, so it could be more?
Could be more, but good question. I'm not sure. Here the Gemara discusses a typical classic beam, just 1 tefach. Oh, Abaye says the platform must extend at least 4 tefachim. So now the Gemara tries to understand what's their point of dispute. Shall we say that what they argue about is the manda amar tefach? Rav Yosef, who says that the raised area must be just 1 tefach, kasavar mutar lishtamesh tachat hakora. He holds that one is permitted to carry directly under the korah. So therefore, it's sufficient if only the tefach of ground under the korah is raised, because we need the crossbeam to be noticeable by those who are carrying in the mavoi. So if one is permitted to carry even under the crossbeam, so then people carrying there will notice the korah overhead and be reminded not to carry it outside to the public domain.
Why? Because they raised it and then it's 20 amot.
Yeah, and then since you can even carry when you stand on this raised area, and from there the crossbeam is noticeable, because from there it's no more than 20 amot from the ground.
So basically we raised it so it's less than 20 amot.
Or exactly 20, not more than 20. And maybe Rav Yosef, maybe Abaye holds, ve'uman de'amar arba'a, Abaye says that it must be 4 tefachim deep, kashavar asur lishtamesh tachat hakorah. He says that there's a prohibition to carry under the korah. And if so, if the raised area would only be 1 tefach, just under the korah itself, so then the korah would not be noticeable for those who are permitted to carry within the mavoi. Because if you stand on that raised area, you cannot carry there. It's right under the korah. If you go a little inside into the mavoi, then the ground will be lower and will be more than 20 amot away from the crossbeam. From there, it's not considered noticeable, the crossbeam.
Why do you say that's also to carry in the korah?
Well, that's a dispute. Is one, from where does the korah permit carrying? Is it from its outer edge or from its inner edge?
So it basically means that you need 3 tefachim of the area that there's less than 20 amot height, so you can have it carry. You don't need the whole area to have
Right.
20 amot. You just need 3 tefachim.
3 tefachim, right, inside of the korah.
Right, because the tefach itself under there we're not allowed to use.
Right, there's
Only 3
you're left with 3 tefachim.
That's enough.
Yeah.
And what's the idea of 3 tefachim?
So Rashi says that the idea actually is not 3, it's actually 4, because it says since 1 tefach is insufficient, so you have to have more than 1 tefach, so make it already 4, because 4 is considered a significant area.
5, 10,
No, in general, 4 tefachim is considered an important, significant place.
Oh, that's right. We do 4 and 4 and 10.
Yeah, in many cases, it's in private domain, and 4 by 4, that's kom chashuv.
The normal thing is when you walk, you don't look up. You go through this door, but you don't look at the top of the door. So You don't.
Even if you don't look at it in right.
When you're actually there, you don't bother with it. So.
But when you come from a distant place, so you notice things.
When you're further away.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that it's noticeable for. Sukkah also Ner Chanukah also. If it's above 20 amot, it's not considered noticeable.
I think it should be more than 7 or 8
8 tefachim high is this low?
Well, you're not continuing on those.
When you fall on the ground, you surely notice it. Well, so the Gemara says, no, the Chule Alma, I can tell you, everybody agree, Kasavre mutar lishtamesh tachat hakorah, that one is permitted to carry under the Korah. And the dispute between Rav Yosef and Abaye is, what's the purpose of the crossbeam? Rav Yosef holds that the function of the crossbeam is to serve as a reminder that the mavoi ends at that point, and that it's distinct from the public domain. So even if only a tefach of ground is built up directly under the Korah, so then it serves as a noticeable reminder for those who carry there, at least there. So it functions. But Abaye says, no, Abaye holds that the function of the Korah is to serve as a partition. And a partition is that the outer edge of the Korah, we view it as if it virtually goes down. Now there's a rule that says, there's never a partition for an area of less than 4 tefachim. It's not considered a valid partition. So if we need the Korah to serve as a virtual partition, there must be an area of at least 4 tefachim for which it could serve as a Korah, which must be no more than 20 amot away from it. That's why Abaye says you have to make a raised area of at least 4 tefachim deep for the Korah to be able to become a mechitza.
How would it be mechitza if it's like you have 20 amot between the Korah and the Torah?
No, up to 20 is okay. Up to 20 amot is considered valid. More than... Yeah, we view the edge of the crossbeam as if it goes virtually down all the way, and a virtual mechitza.
Yeah, and also 4 tefachim is like 10 inches, it's like 35 centimeters. It's not so much, it's like this much.
Yeah, it's still more than a tefach, but...
Isn't there a minimum, when you start on it, is there not a minimum amount you need to start?
No, you can sell land even as tiny as... there's no limit.
You can find a line.
If you can find. Alternatively, the Chule Alma, Korah Mishum Eker, all agree that the purpose of the Korah is to serve as a reminder. Here, their point of dispute is, do we need to equate the dimensions of the reminder below and the reminder above? That's their point of dispute. Just as the rabbis decreed that the Korah, which reminds people not to carry beyond the Mavoi, must be at least a tefach wide, so too the area below it, which this Korah is readily noticeable, must be a tefach wide, but need not be wider. And that's the point of dispute. The Mar Savar, Rav Yosef holds, Amrina neker shel mata keker shel mala. The reminder below is sufficient if it contains the same dimensions as the reminder above, just 1 tefach. And Abaye says, no, Mar Savar lo amrina neker shel mata keker shel mala. The reminder below, according to Abaye, must be more than just 1 tefach, must be larger, and therefore must be 4 tefachim. Alternatively, there's another way to explain their dispute. In general, the reminder below could be just like the reminder above, but Abaye here is concerned that there's a rabbinic decree, there's a concern that it might be eroded. This built-up ground might be eroded by people who walk on it, tread on it all the time. So, says Abaye, you have to make it larger. Well, it depends how you make it. If you make it from cement, it might not be, but whatever he's concerned that over time he's afraid that people tread on it, it become narrower. And now comes a similar question about the minimum height of the Korah, because the Korah maximum could be 20 amot, but the minimum is 10 tefachim. So what if I have pachot me'asarat tefachim? What if the crossbeam was lower than 10 tefachim? And he excavated it, the floor, to complete the required height of 10 tfachim.
How did you get underneath it?
He can either climb above it or crawl under it. Okay,
What's 10 fucking like 90 centimeters?
like this table maybe, like 1 meter, about 90 centimeters. Yeah. Yeah. Also, well, in sukkah, a partition 10 tefachim is considered a significant also for the height. So the question is, how much must he excavate? So here too, the Gemara wonders. The assumption was that the question is, how much must he excavate down to make the gap? As much as needed. Depends on the gap between the crossbeam and the floor. He has to make it up to 10. Ella, the question is, the question is, how far must he excavate it into the mavoy? The same question as was with the raised area. Now there's with the lower area. So here too is a dispute, but with different figures. Rav Yosef Amar be'arba'a, 4 tfachim, he must excavate into the mavoy. Ve'abaye Amar be'arba amot, 4 amot. So now the question is here too, what's their point of dispute? Let's say that they argue in Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi's concept. The Itmar, it was said, Mavoy shenifratz mitzido klapei rosho. They have a diagram, I guess it belongs to footnote 14, right? There's a Mavoy, you can see the entrance to the Mavoy with a crossbeam, but on the side wall, there's a breach. So, Itmar Mishmei de Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi, it was said in the name of Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi, if there is a sideboard there between the Korah and the breach, that is at least 4 tfachim, and that's that remaining wall there, where the crossbeam is on, if that is at least 4 tfachim long, so then that's fine. Why? Because they hold that the minimum length of the mavoy is 4 tfachim. So if this wall at the entrance to the mavoy, the wall at the right, is at least 4 tfachim long, okay, so that's the entrance to the mavoy, and then that breach could be considered like just an opening in the wall, and an opening in the wall could be valid up to 10 amot. So matir b'firza ad asara, that permits carrying even with a breach up to 10 amot. But if the length of this wall at the entrance of the mavoy is less than 4 tfachim, so then the entrance where the crossbeam is cannot be considered the mavoy, because it does not have the minimum length of a mavoy, which is 4 tfachim. In that case, pachot mishlosha matir, only if the breach is less than 3 tfachim, then there's no problem, because always we say less than 3 tfachim, lavud, it's like sealed. Shlosha ina matir, but if the breach is 3 or more tfachim, so then the entire entrance to the mavoy is now like ruined. There's no entrance. So basically what we can derive from their statement is that the minimum length of a mavoy is 4 tfachim. Less than 4 tfachim cannot be considered a mavoy. Did what?
Didn't we establish that before?
I'm not sure if it was mentioned before. What's the minimum length of a mavoy? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We mentioned it?
We were talking about small amount or big amount. Small amount or big.
So there we mentioned the length of a mavoy?
There's 2 answers. One of the answers was that we did something with
Right.
so it has a big
Meshech mavoy be'arba amot. Right. Yeah, there we mentioned arba amot, but here it's 4 tfachim. Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, nothing like something like this. How could that be considered a mavoy? Yes, I think your book has a nice picture. This.
They're talking about where the crossbeam is resting on, that should be 4 tfachim, and then you can have a break in the wall.
No, they talk about the length of the wall on the right of the crossbeam, on the right side of the crossbeam. So that should be at least 4 tfachim. And if that's 4 tfachim, that's already a mavoi in and of itself. That's a minimum mavoi. Yeah, the length of 4 tfachim. Oh, so that's what the Gemara says. Maybe Rav Yosef, maybe Rav Yosef agrees with Rabbi Ami that the mavoi's minimum size is 4 tfachim, and that's why he says that when you have to excavate beneath the crossbeam, all you need to excavate is the length of 4 tfachim, and that's already a mavoi. It's considered a mavoi. The crossbeam belongs to it, and then further in does not matter if it's deeper or higher. Makes no difference. But Abaye disagrees, and Abaye holds that the minimum length of a mavoi is 4 amot. That's why he requires an excavation of 4 amot for it to be the minimum size of a mavoi.
What's the basis on the what there was in the Mishkan, the base of Mikdash? They don't know what was there.
No, this is not based on the Mishkan or the Mikdash. Just logic. It's a rabbinic matter. It's not a biblical matter.
Yeah, but the whole entrance, the size, the height, everything is based on the open.
No. So this is just. So Abaye tells you no. Abaye says, I can agree with Rabbi Ami's ruling that in general, that in his case, even if of that wall only 4 tfachim are left, it's okay, because Hatam Sof Mavoi there, in Rabbi Ami's case, the Mavoi's side wall was breached. The case there is the end of a Mavoi. The larger mavoi was fully adjusted before its side wall was breached. So therefore, its permitted status is retained or restored even if the korah stands at the entranceway of only a minor 4 tfachim long mavoi. There it's okay because it was already an established mavoi from before that. But now we talk about making the mavoi for the first time. If you want to make it for the first time, achatchilat mavoi, the mavoi was never properly adjusted, and therefore Abaye requires you must have 4 amot. And then even brings a support, a proof that when you begin to make a mavoi, it must be at least 4 amot long. Amar Abaye mena aminala. What's my source? The Tanya. The Braita says, "En mavoi nitar belechi vekora." Mavoi cannot be permitted by lechi korah, by these features that we say in the Mishnah that permits to carry within the mavoi, unless there are houses and courtyards opening into it, which means we need at least 2 openings of courtyards into the mavoi. Now, the definition of an opening is at least 4 tfachim wide. That's a minimum width of an opening. Now, if the mavoi itself, its length is just 4 tfachim, so how can you find a case that a mavoi so shallow should have 2 chatzirot opening into it? There's no room for the opening because the opening itself is 4 tfachim. So the 2 sides of the mavoi are like just openings without a wall.
Why does it have to say 4 hours when they're 8 hours?
Because 4 amot is also a known figure that is considered significant. So if it's
Client, he said that it was significant to have a field with 8 hours according to Beishamai.
no, there you need 8 amot for each side, 4 and 4. But the basic thing is 4 amot. That's considered a significant area. So if it's must be more than 4 tfachim, so the next figure to jump to is 4 amot. No, if you want to say, says Abaye, if you want to say, if you want to say that they can open entrances for the 2 chatzirot in the back wall of the mavoi, which is wide enough to accommodate these 2 entrances. Footnote 23. Right? In a case where though the mavoi is only 4 tfachim deep, it's considerably wider. Right? So it's wider, and there in the back.
There's no requirements for how long it is. Right.
Exactly. There's no requirement for the width of the mavoi, but this is impossible. This scenario is impossible because its length must exceed its width, and here in this case, the width exceeds the length. What kind of mavoi could become permissible through lechi v'korah, kol she'orko yater al rechbo, only such a mavoi whose length is greater than its width, and also vatim v'chatzorot ptuchim letocho. So since if its length is just 4 tfachim, and its width must even be smaller than that, how can you have enough room for 2 openings into such a mavoi? It's like a joke. No? So Rav Yosef, how can he explain this? Rav Yosef, who says that the minimum mavoi is 4 tfachim, how could it possibly be? Mavoi is just 4 tfachim deep, and you can still have 2 openings that open into it? How can you have that? No, he agrees. So the answer is the fatach le bekeren zavit. He opens the entrances for the 2 chatzerot diagonally at the corner, with each entrance taking up 3 tefachim in one direction and 1 tefach in the other. Footnote 25. Diagram A. All right, they have this. So the depth of the mavoi is just 4 tefachim, and the 2 openings and the 2 sides are like. Actually, if the length and width are both exactly 4 tefachim, then the enclosure is square and not a true mavoi. As we just said, it must be a rectangle, right? Long and narrow. Okay, so Rashi, it seems that Rav Yosef means that the width is slightly less than 4 tefachim, like a diagonal entrance.
So it doesn't have to be 4 on both sides.
No, so there is, the mavoi is indeed 4 tefachim deep, right? And how can you have an opening also 4 tefachim? So the opening goes diagonally. Yeah. Okay. So this source was rejected by Rav Yosef. So Amar Abaye says, Abaye mina min alam. What's another source that the minimum size of mavoi is 4 amot? De Amar Rami bar Chama Amar Rav Huna lechi abolet midofno shel mavoi. What if there is a lechi that protrudes from the mavoi wall into the entranceway? Now here it actually refers to not a lechi but actually a wall, like they have in footnote 26, the diagram. They built a wall to like slightly close off the entrance to the mavoi. And that wall was not built for the sake of being a lechi, just a wall, maybe to block the part of the entrance. So pachot me 4 amot, if that lechi protrudes less than 4 amot, nidon mishum lechi, it's judged as a lechi. There's no need for another lechi to permit carrying in it. That wall itself could be considered a lechi if it's less than 4 amot long across the mavoi. 4 amot, but if the lechi protrudes 4 amot or more into the entranceway, so then nidan mishum mavoi, that itself is judged as a wall of a mavoi, and therefore it cannot serve as a lechi. There's a need for another lechi to permit carrying in it. Yeah, okay. So now he says if it's so long 4 amot, so it's like a wall of a mavoi in and of itself. So then it cannot be considered a lechi. Since 4 amot is the length of a mavoi, a wall that long protruding into the entranceway is viewed as an actual mavoi wall. It's not a lechi. So therefore, another lechi is required to permit to carry there. So that's Abaye's proof that the length of a mavoi is 4 amot. And what does Rav Yosef say about this? Rav Yosef says there are 2 matters. As regards removing a board from the status of a lechi, so then indeed it takes 4 amot in its length to consider it like a wall and not like a lechi. But lemevei mavoi, as regards an area becoming a mavoi that can be adjusted with a lechi or korah, afilu be'arba'a tefachim, nami avei mavoi, even if it's just 4 tefachim deep, that's enough.
What happens between 4 tefachim and 4 amot? It's like something that...
No, so then obviously it's according to Rav Yosef that's a mavoi. If it's more than 4 tefachim, it's all a mavoi. If you talk about this wall, this protruding wall, so then up to 4 amot, it could still serve as a lechi. But once it's 4 amot, it cannot be considered a lechi because then it's like a wall. How does 4 tefachim become? See here? Yeah, even less than one step. Well, it's a mavoy, a miniature mavoy. You have a mini Israel. You can see these. Yeah.
It's like the lawyer's definition. You have to have a minimum.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. Of course, the protrusion is at the external edge, at the entrance of the mavoy. Yeah, you do not have the diagram. You have Steinsaltz. Yeah. Yeah, here we have a diagram that you can see this. I can actually send you. There's a this book they have now in the email. You can receive it. Link, yeah, PDF.
If you send it to me, I'll send it to you.
Okay, I'll send you the link. ואוקיי, גופה, אמר רמי בר חמא, אמר רב הונא, לחי הבולט מדופנו של מבוי, if there's a לחי, which is actually a wall that protrudes from the מבוי wall into the entranceway, פחות מ4 אמות, if its length is less than 4 אמות, if it protrudes less than 4 אמות, so then נידון משום לחי is considered a לחי. And that entrance of that מבוי is already rectified, there's no need to do anything else. There's no need for another lechi to permit it. 4 amot, but if the lechi protrudes 4 amot or more into the entranceway, so then it cannot be considered a lechi. Nidon mishum mavoy, that itself is like a wall of a mavoy, וצריך lechi אחר להתירו. No, this was a proof for Abaye before, but Rav Yosef also explained it according to his method. Yeah, if you need either a lechi or a korah, that's what Beit Hillel say. Beit Shammai say you need both, lechi and korah, but halacha follows Beit Hillel that either one, lechi or korah. And now the question is, what if indeed that protruding wall is 4 amot long or more, and then we need another lechi in order to permit to carry in the mavoy? Oto lechi, where do you put that other lechi? If you put it alongside the original 4 amah lechi, it looks like just an extension of that wall. So it doesn't appear like a noticeable reminder. Usufu, the Kamustifale, just appears like he's adding to the original wall.
Yes, but there was a cross. You've got 2 walls, no cross entrance. And you can't go
No, lechi is not a cross. Lechi is a side post.
You walk along, and then you come to the actual mavoy. The mavoy has a cross.
No. We talk about without a cross beam, just a side post. Lechi.
Yeah, but where you come into the main, it's
When you enter the mavoy,
yes.
you have the entrance is like there's a wall built here, and you can enter here. So if you put another side post next to the edge of this wall, it looks like an extension of the wall. It doesn't look like a noticeable reminder. So how can you put it? So, the other side. Oh, okay. So that's one solution. So that's Rav Papa's solution. Put it on the other side. In these pictures, there are nice pictures. These color pictures. You can even put it alongside the original wall, just to make its height different, either above or below the height of the wall, so it's noticeable. Yeah, right? The either enlarges it or reduces it, so no problem to make it noticeable. And now comes another condition of this. Amar Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua says, Lo amaran ela b'mavoi shmone. This 4 amah lechi is invalid if this protruding wall is 4 amot long, and we say that itself cannot be considered a lechi. We need another lechi to permit to carry within that mavoi. Says Rav Huna, that also depends on the width of the mavoi itself, because if the width of the mavoi is at least 8 amot, so then this protruding wall covers less than half, or or either half or less than half of the width of the mavoi itself. So then it cannot. There's no permission to carry there without a proper lechi or a crossbeam. It says it all depends on the width of the mavoi, the width of the street, the alleyway. If the width of the mavoi is 8 amot or more, so then this protruding wall, which is 4 amot, is not the majority of the width. It doesn't get to the majority that does not reach the majority of the width, and therefore it cannot, in and of itself, permit to carry within the mavoi.
This wall is a 4 by 8, a thick wall.
No, the wall protrudes 4 amot into the mavoi. Right? We have look at the diagram in page 20, footnote 26, page 5A3. You have the Hebrew, so maybe it might be a different. Right. So now, if this wall, we said, if this protruding wall is 4 amot long, so then it cannot be considered a lechi. Says now Ravuna Braid Rav Yeshua, it cannot be considered a lechi, and it does not permit to carry in the mavoi in case the width of the entire mavoi is more than 8 amot. But in case the width of the mavoi is just like 7 amot, in which case this protruding wall actually closes the majority of the width of the mavoi. Exactly. Then you do not need a lechi because there's a permission because of another aspect. It's like a walled side. The side is like mostly walled. So that itself permits to carry there in the mavoi. Then you do not need a lechi nor korah. The fact that the fourth side is mostly fenced, that itself is a permission. A wall, right? So you have actually a 4-walled area. The mavoi is now 4-walled. Right. No, but what you need for it to be considered walled is that the majority of the width is walled. So if the entire width is 7 amot and the protruding wall is 4 amot, you have a majority walled. So then it's like a walled side. If it's a walled side, so then there's no need for a lechi or korah.
Why don't we use what we said before, the 2 panels with reach, we can see it through.
Yeah, that's in case of a breach in a wall. But here you do not even have a wall. And unless you have, so this protruding wall, if it does not even cover the majority of the width.
I'm saying, this is also a wall. So even if it's less than 7 amot, the whole thing is 8 amot in total. It can even be 2 amot. If the whole thing is 8 amot, so 6 amot is less than 10.
Yeah, but it's not a breach. It's not a breach in a wall. It's there never was a wall there. It's just the entrance to the mavoi. So that's what he says. Where did we get to? Right. Then the mavoi is permitted because the walled portion of the entranceway, the walled part, exceeds the opening. So although the 4 amah board is not a valid lechi, it walls off a majority of the entranceway, and no further adjustment is required. Because by doing this, by making this, the entire alleyway is walled on all 4 sides. So it's a great private domain. Exactly. So before he carries there, if he comes from outside anyway, he cannot carry because outside is a public domain. And if he lives there, he should know if he's a guest. So he has to inquire, how can he carry? And then he says, how does he know that if the walled portion exceeds the opening, that's a valid permission? He derives it, the kal v'chomer mechatzer. Until now, we did not have mentioned such an option to permit the carry in the mavoi. So far, we only knew about 2 options, either a crossbeam or a side post. Now he says there's actually a third permission to carry in a mavoi in case the opening is mostly fenced. So he derives it, kal v'chomer from mechatzer, because umah chatzer, if you're in a courtyard, she'einan niteret belechi v'korah, there a lechi, a side post or a crossbeam, is invalid to permit to carry there. Chatzer must be enclosed on all sides. And yet, niteret be'omed merubah al parutz, there's a permission to carry in it in case the walled portion exceeds the opening. So if a majority is walled, that's a sufficient permission to carry within the courtyard. It was not enacted for Chatzer, it was only for Mavoi. It's a rabbinic enactment. No, it's a rabbinic innovation. Mavoi is an alleyway into which a few courtyards are open, at least 2 courtyards open to that alleyway. Chatzer is just one courtyard to which a few houses are open to. Yeah, so Chatzer is a smaller.
Basically, few houses are open.
No. Mavoi must have at least 2 courtyards, and in each courtyard must have at least 2 houses. Hotel, there's no limit to the number of houses could open to it, but it's just one courtyard. Right. As long as the majority is walled, it's okay. No, majority must be walled, and that's enough. So if even there, that's enough. So certainly Mavoi, which is easier to permit, because Mavoi, shenitar belechi v'korah, Mavoi, according to this Kal V'chomer, can even become permitted through a lechi or korah, which implies that it's easier to permit carrying in the Mavoi. So Inodin, is it not logical that the same permission that applies to a Chatzer would apply to that? Shenitar be'omed merubeh al ha'parutz? If the walled portion exceeds the opening, should be sufficient. The sides of the Mavoi, you mean the length of the sides? Is there a limit to the maximum size of a Mavoi? I'm not sure. Not that I know of.
Isn't the argument around the Surah Al-Fatah, the same concept? Can you take it and make it a greater scale? Because some people don't accept the area, full estate. Because the Surah Al-Fatah, you blow it up and you turn it into a whole city. I mean, maybe that's the question.
I'm not sure. That's another matter. But Mavoi, it's an alleyway. If it's surrounded from 3 sides with enclosed on 3 sides, then should be no limit to the width. But now the Gemara tries to refute this Kal V'chomer and to say that it's not so obvious that it's easier to permit to carry inside a Mavoi than to carry in a courtyard. Because Male Chatzer, Sheken Pirtzata Be'eser. A Chatzer could be even more lenient. The fact is that its enclosure is considered intact even with an opening, with a breach that is 10 amot wide, which is not the case in a Mavoi. Tomar b'Mavoi shepirtzato be'arba'a. Mavoi, its enclosure is considered breached if one of its walls has an opening of 4 tfachim only. So this is a stringency in a Mavoi over a courtyard, and if so, we cannot derive a leniency from a courtyard and apply it to a Mavoi. So the fact that in a courtyard, if there's a majority walled, is enough, does not necessarily say that the same would apply to a Mavoi. Yeah, Chatzer must be majority walled. No, but you need 4 sides and 4 sides. But the answer is that Rav Huna bred Rav Yoshua, who is the one who spoke here, Kasavar Rav Huna bred Rav Yoshua, Mavoi nami, pirtzato be'eser, Mavoi 2, its enclosure is considered intact even with an opening up to 10 amot wide. So there's no aspect in which a Mavoi is more stringent than a courtyard. Hence, we can derive a leniency from a courtyard and apply it to a Mavoi. But the question is, how could he say that? But Leman Kamrinan, according to whom are we talking here? Le Rav Huna, we talk according to Rav Huna, because Rav Huna was the one who invalidated the 4 amal lechi above. We speak according to him. The Rav Huna, pirtzato be'arba'a sfirot, but Rav Huna holds that a breach in a Mavoi invalidates it, even if it's as small as 4 tfachim. How can you say otherwise? The answer is that Rav Huna bred Rav Yoshua, he said his own opinion is not necessarily according to Rav Huna. That's Rav Huna bred Rav Yoshua. It's another sage. It was actually his disciple. Rav Huna bred Rav Yoshua was a disciple of Rav Huna. Two sages. But Rav Ashi now says another concept. Rav Ashi Amar, afilu taima b'mavoi 8, even if the width of the Mavoi is 8 amot exactly, and that the protruding wall is 4 amot, there's no need for another lechi to permit carrying in that Mavoi, Nami lo tzarich lechi. Why? Because, says Rav Ashi, manafshach, whatever possibility you consider, we cannot ever be sure that the wall is exactly 4 amot protruding, which is exactly half the width of the entire mavoi. We can never be sure about that. So we should take into consideration all possible options. And there are actually 3 options. Either that the wall is shorter than 4 amot in the fracture, either that it's longer than 4 amot, or it's exactly 4 amot. So says Rav Ashi, if the walled portion is in fact slightly greater than the width of the mavoi, if it's 4 amot plus something, and the entire width is just 8 amot, so then nitar be'omed merubah parut. So then carrying in the mavoi should be permitted due to the fact that the walled portion exceeds the opening. That's in this case. If a parus nafich, in case the open area is greater than the walled portion, in case the length of this wall is just a bit less than 4 amot, and the open area is a little more than 4 amot, so then it could be considered a lechi, nidon mishum lechi. What other option is there? Maya Marta, what could you say? That the shavut arvei kadadi, maybe they're exactly the same? Maybe the wall itself protruding is exactly 4 amot, and the open area is exactly 4 amot. Anyway, that's a doubt. Nobody can say that he's so certain about this. Avalei safek, the divrein, it's an uncertainty concerning a rabbinic, right? Vesafek divrein lerkel, and an uncertainty in a rabbinic matter, we go leniently. So either way, it could be permitted. Yeah, but even with a tape measure, it cannot be exactly. If it's like a millimeter difference, you cannot be. Maybe with a laser measure, you can. Even that might not be that accurate. Exactly. Even that also you cannot be sure. So it's part of the doubt. Okay. I think, yeah. The conclusion here is Allah follows Rav Ashi, who says that if there's a mavoi 8 amot wide and there's a protruding wall 4 amot, so there's no need for another lechi to permit there, because that wall could either be like a lechi in case it's a little slightly less than 4 amot, or it could be like an enclosure if it's a little more than 4 amot. In other words, there's a doubt, so it's a rabbinic matter, you can be lenient. That's the conclusion. Yeah, these pictures really help. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. I'll send Ivor the